Right, welcome. So we continue our focus on exploring the PERTS model, and this video will explore social connectedness in more detail. So first we'll begin by defining interpersonal relationships, then we'll define what healthy relationships are. Next, we'll look at the impact isolation can have on our lives. And finally, we'll examine the effective communication skills that you can use in order to build, maintain, and enhance your support systems in order to foster those healthy relationships with others in your life. So, what are interpersonal relationships? Interpersonal relationships can be described as a connection, association, interaction, or a bond between two or more people. And these relationships can be with romantic partners, family members, friends, and professional colleagues. So take a moment and identify some of the interpersonal relationships in your life. We all have them. As social beings, we need them. So take a moment and think about some of the interpersonal relationships that you have in your life. So you may have thought about relationships with your friends, maybe a best friend, your siblings, parents, bosses, coworkers, or maybe even other students here at school. And these are just a few of them, right? So good work on that. We need these healthy interpersonal relationships in our lives in order to meet our social needs as human beings. And these relationships help us learn who we are, offer us support, and of course, enhance our lives. And each relationship meets different needs that we have. So it's important that each are unique and that you reach out to different people in your support system based on what needs you need met. So, what makes relationships so important is that we are wired to thrive relationally. So, this means that healthy relationships improve our physical and mental health, and of course, we need others over the course of our entire life. The healthiest relationships have a balance of self and the other. There's a balance of knowing when to accomplish something on your own and when to ask for help when needed. And these healthy relationships engage in healthy boundaries, active listening, time for personal interest and development on their own, honest communication, taking personal responsibility for their behaviors, and being open and approachable by others or to others. So, when we lack healthy, meaningful relationships in our lives, it can cause us to experience loneliness. Loneliness occurs when we feel a sense of being without others, misunderstood, not supported, or cared for. It's important to note here that loneliness doesn't require people to be absent from our lives. That's right, we can feel lonely even when we are surrounded by others. And as a result, loneliness can increase as stress and symptoms of depression or anxiety increase. According to Dr. Douglas Nemisek, an MD for Cigna's and Cigna's Chief Medical Officer for Behavioral Health, loneliness is more dangerous for human beings than smoking up to 15 cigarettes per day. He also describes loneliness as an epidemic that has increasing physical and mental health concerns. In addition, loneliness is linked to inflammation and compromised immune systems, increased mortality rates, and worse health effects than drinking excessively, not exercising, and obesity. So, loneliness has devastating impacts on our health, and this is why we need to establish and maintain healthy interpersonal relationships. So, how do we combat loneliness? Well, the answer is simple, right? By connecting with others. So, Bruce Perry, a clinician, researcher, and teacher, states that for years, mental health professionals taught people that they could be psychologically healthy without social support, that unless you love yourself, no one else will love you. The truth is, you cannot love yourself unless you have been loved and are loved. The capacity to love cannot be built in isolation. And what this quote is really saying to us is that, and really driving home, is that we need other peoples in order to learn how to love not just them, but also ourselves. So we are social beings, and this really drives that point home. So now that you understand the need for others, how do you develop healthy relationships? If you thought things like active listening, shared responsibilities, respect, empathy, kindness, all of these are correct. And this list is not complete, but one thing each of these have in common is the need for effective communication skills. Maintaining effective communication skills helps to build and manage relationships effectively. So let's examine effective communication skills with regards to the language that we choose. Language is key, and it impacts the relational and the contextual parts of our lives. So first, we use both verbal and nonverbal language. Both are important when sending and receiving messages. However, it's important to note that 93% of the message we communicate is communicated non-verbally. So yes, it is not what you say, it's how you say it. Nonverbal language accounts for body language, tone, as well as eye contact. And verbal communication accounts for the language that we use. So language is also important as it shapes our perception of the messages that we send and receive. So let's take a look at what this means next. So when communicating with significant people in our lives, we need to pay attention to the language that we use when we're communicating. This is especially true when we are trying to communicate an important message that expresses our emotions about something that's important to us, and when we're navigating conflict in relationships. Let's examine I, you, and we language specifically. I language is an effective way to take ownership and responsibility for your actions and emotions, while you language tends to place blame on others. So listen to the difference in these two examples. I felt upset when I didn't receive a phone call yesterday versus you didn't call me back yesterday. The first example takes responsibility, and the second one places blame on the other for not calling that person back. So think about the impact that the you statement will likely have on the relationship. It's likely that the person being blamed will respond defensively and that the conflict could even escalate. We language is also an effective form of language. We language communicates a sense of inclusion, that both parties are in it together. And this promotes unity and partnership, which enhances relationships. So listen to these examples. We can create a schedule that works for us both. We can clean the house together. Ultimately, blame impacts the person blaming by preventing them from being vulnerable and getting their needs met, and it causes the other person to become defensive or check out altogether as a result. So it's harmful to the relationship itself, and it prevents the opportunity for meaningful connections to be made. So with that being said, language is powerful, and it impacts our relationships with others and our lives as a whole. So we've covered a lot of information in this video. We started by defining interpersonal relationships and identifying them in our lives. We examined healthy relationships and why we need these relationships in order to prevent loneliness. And then last, we discussed the importance of using effective communication, specifically with the impact that I, you, and we can have on our interpersonal relationships. So we will continue studying the PERTS model next week. If you have any questions, please reach out. Have a great day.